These countries have pre-ordered nearly 4 billion doses of coronavirus vaccines from Western drug makers. Some wealthy nations have even secured enough doses to cover every person in the country multiple times. But developing countries that don't have much money to buy vaccines or the technology to develop their own are at risk of being left behind with nothing. So China and Russia are stepping in with vaccine diplomacy. In one deal, Beijing will sell coronavirus vaccines to Pakistan in exchange for testing them in the country.
Official statements from Beijing suggest a willingness to blur their humanitarian and foreign policy objectives.
While Russia is pursuing global prestige, it's boasting that 50 countries are interested in its COVID-19 vaccine.
Rusia, bajo el liderazgo del presidente Vladimir Putin, trae nuevamente alivio al mundo.
The whole point for Russia seems to be to plant a flag and be able to say that this is a Russian vaccine that is saving lives around the world.
So what are China and Russia getting in exchange for their new coronavirus vaccines? In the West, private drug companies have been largely driving each step of the process, from research and development to manufacturing, often with financial help from governments. But that's not really the case in Russia or China.
In Russia, it has been a state-led effort. State labs have been at the forefront of developing the vaccines. Some of these state enterprises will also manufacture the vaccines.
A lot of Chinese state-owned companies and the Chinese military are involved. The government would have a say in how they share those vaccines abroad.
Both China and Russia's experimental vaccines have been fast-tracked through regulatory hurdles way ahead of their Western competitors. In July, before any Western country, Beijing approved emergency use of experimental vaccines. And since then, hundreds of thousands of people in China have been inoculated outside of clinical trials. Privately owned Chinese firm Sinovac said its recent vaccinations were voluntary, while a subsidiary of Sinopharm didn't say if it informed those vaccinated of potential risks.
Добрый день, уважаемые коллеги.
In August, Russia made headlines with this.
Сегодня утром впервые в мире зарегистрирована вакцина против новой коронавирусной инфекции.
After having tested Sputnik V on 76 people, the Ministry of Health registered the vaccine. Russia has said the registration is conditional and published positive data from early clinical trials of the shot.
The vaccine, while still being in trials, it is already approved for a limited purpose. In the West, you have to go through 3 phases on tens of thousands of people.
In order to test that many people, Western drug makers have looked abroad for volunteers, and Russia and China are doing the same.
China has appeared to bring the virus under control within its own borders. In order to test for the efficacy of a vaccine, scientists need countries where the virus is still circulating, and preferably in countries where the case count is still high.
China has started up trials in a lot of developing countries, as well as some wealthier states. Even Bahrain's crown prince is among the participants. But Russia and China's vaccines haven't been shown to be effective. If they're handed out widely and turn out not to work, this could accelerate the spread of the virus.
将作为全球公共产品，优先向发展中国家提供。
These partnerships could leave countries that are struggling to contain the virus in a financially vulnerable position. Remember Pakistan? In August, a Chinese state drug maker made one of the first deals with the country to test vaccines there. But the financial terms haven't been worked out, raising questions about how Pakistan will repay China. And it's not a trivial question, because Islamabad is already financially saddled to China through Beijing's huge infrastructure building program called the Belt and Road Initiative. Over the next 20 years, Pakistan will have to pay back China $40 billion. China says Islamabad owes far less for projects that are in the works. For China, vaccine diplomacy might not just give it financial leverage, but also a political one. The Chinese government and at least one private drug maker have offered vaccines to some of its neighbors in the South China Sea, a region where China has clashed with other countries over its territorial claims.
Beijing has talked about garnering support from countries on territorial claims in the South China Sea in the same statements that it also talks about deepening vaccine-related collaboration.
Beijing has also decided to take a larger leadership role by joining the World Health Organization's COVAX initiative, a major effort to distribute COVID-19 vaccines to poorer countries, a project the U.S. has rejected.
Готовы делиться нашим опытом и продолжать взаимодействовать со всеми государствами и международными структурами, в том числе это касается поставок в другие страны российской вакцины.
Although Russia doesn't have China's deep pockets, its Sputnik V vaccine could also help it make new friends and expand its influence.
In terms of the way Moscow is approaching its export strategy, it is looking at the Middle East, where it has key trade and energy partners. It is looking at Brazil, a huge growing economy, and it is looking at India and developing countries in Asia. It is a major signpost to show that Russia is back on the global stage, and not just in its traditional expertise areas like military exports, like energy, oil and gas, but also in technology.
Many people still believe that China is to blame for this global health crisis. So if China can show that it can help stop spread the virus with a vaccine, that might ease perceptions of China being a kind of bad actor.
Although many in the West note the effectiveness of their shots remains to be proven, Beijing and Moscow are pushing to get a head start in the global vaccine race, vying for prestige, deals, and sway.
Didn't take very long after meeting you for me to make a move. Less than a week. And I told myself not long before that I had to focus on school. And any involvement with a girl I